They want to arrest me for my love of romance in books, and I won't let them. Hello beautiful people, my name is Vendi, and today I'm going to be telling you my top SFF bookish couples. Like many readers, I am a fan of some element of romance existing in my books, regardless of what genre they are. I by no means need a romantic subplot to enjoy a book to the fullest. In fact, some of my favorite stories are ones where, in lieu of a romantic partnership, there is a stronger focus on friendships or deep familial bonds. But given that yesterday was Valentine's Day, I thought I would shine a bit of a spotlight on some of my favorite romances that have happened in sci-fi and fantasy books that I really enjoy. There's not going to be any sort of ranking or rhyme or reason to any of the couples that I show you. If they make it into this video, you can rest assured that they are pairings that I think about in like a feral way on a relatively regular basis. The first couple that I'm going to show you are my favorite couple from a currently ongoing series that is also one of my favorites, and that is Edwin and Isolde from Susan Dennard's The Witchlands series. There are any number of couples from this series that I can talk about. Many of them have me deep in my feelings, but Edwin and Isolde hold a special place in my heart. In the Witchlands mythos, certain people have things called witcheries, which are magics tied to the four sort of natural elements, water, fire, earth, and air, but also to the ether and the void. Edwin is a type of void witch known as a blood witch, and he is a monk mercenary for hire. And Isolde belongs to an ethnic group that practices thread witchery, which is an ether witch power wherein practitioners can sort of see the various bonds and emotions that people feel as threads on their bodies, and some subsets of thread witches can control people via these threads as well. Now, one of the reasons Edwin and Isolde call to me as a couple in particular is the way that their witcheries sort of interact with one another and shape the way that their relationship shakes out. When they are still definitely in the enemy stage of their deeply, deeply slow burn enemies to lovers trajectory, which I love those dynamics all the time, so you knew that they were going to make my favorites list the moment they had a hint of that. But anyway, at the very start of it, when Edwin, in his monk for hire sort of position, is tracking down Isolde and her best friend Sophia, he catches the scent of Isolde's blood in order to follow her. And there's something that's just so like primal and crazy about that. It makes me feral. It makes me lose my absolute mind thinking about the fact that he can like follow her and find her no matter where she is based on her blood alone. And Isolde can see other people's threads of emotion and bonds, but she can't see her own. So the feelings that Edwin has and what he's up to and the connections he has with other people, she can see all of that, but she can't really see the bond that grows between the two of them, except sort of a little bit she can, but not quite. And all of these things are deeply confusing for the both of them, and they're very much just like absolute idiots in love, but also some of the smartest people that you'll ever meet. The way that they interact with one another as contrasted with the way that they interact with the rest of the world is just endlessly fascinating. They both belong to this marginalized ethnic group, so they also share this very, very specific understanding of what it's like to walk within a world that is always going to look at you as like a little sketchy, not just because of your ethnicity, but in Edwin's case also because of the type of magic that he practices, because he's a little more passing than Isolde is. But regardless, they share this mutual understanding and this deep, soul-deep trust that they develop over the course of several books and over the course of both of them being in tremendous peril at various points in times and sort of saving one another's lives even when perhaps they would have been better served killing one another. It's such a complicated and nuanced relationship, and I have no words. I know I said I wasn't going to rank these, but if I were, this one actually might be my top one. Actually, I can't commit to that because the deep nostalgia that this pairing has for me, I guess pairing's not quite the right word, but the nostalgia for this one has me in such a chokehold that I don't know if it can be dethroned necessarily. No, I'm going back. I'm going to go ahead and say that these are unrankable for me because all of them just sit on the throne of relationships that make me feral. And one that has been on that throne for a very, very long time and probably will continue to until the day that I die is Will, Jem, and Tessa, all of the above, from Cassandra Clare's The Infernal Devices series. The Infernal Devices is the first of Cassandra Clare's sort of historical London set series. It follows Tessa Gray, a girl who thinks she is human as she's sort of thrust into the world of the Shadow Hunters during the turn of the century as she discovers that she has some sort of magical powers and may not be quite all that she seems. And during this very tumultuous time in her personal life and in the sort of shadow world of London at large during the turn of the century, the relationships that bud and blossom between both Tessa and Jem and Tessa and Will throughout the series just, again, they make me feral. They absolutely ruin my life. We do not get on-page canon confirmation of any sort of triad or throuple situation, but canonically all of these people love each other more than life itself. Jem and Will are Parabatai, which within the world of the Shadowhunters are bonded pairs of fighters who essentially trust one another as though their souls were one another's, to borrow a phrase from Susan Dennard's Wishlands. The love triangle is not a traditional one in the sense that there's any sort of rivalry going on. In fact, both of these boys want so badly for the other one and for Tessa to be happy that they would willingly step back, but the feelings are too great there to do anything. In my heart of hearts, this is a true closed triad where all of the participants therein are romantically and just romantic isn't enough of a word, are entirely in love with and love one another. As with any Cassandra Clare book, it is absolutely full of a melodramatic angst that the CW could only dream of ever achieving. But there's also a deep honesty to these relationships where when you put very young people in very high stakes situations during a time of severe emotional repression for a lot of people, big things and big feelings are going to emerge in a big way. And if you add to that demon curses and hidden parentages and a drug addiction that wasn't on purpose but is still existing, and various types of immortality that begin and end, and very specific rules about marriage and propriety, and you just get, I don't know, like a delicious, wonderful soup for emotional angst and turmoil that just sits in my heart and my feelings forever and probably always will. Speaking of difficulty, angst, and turmoil, the next couple that I'm going to show you is perhaps the most tragic of the pairings that I have listed here with me, and that is Sal and Liette from Sam Sykes's Seven Blades in Black, or the Grave of Empires trilogy. I've only read the first of these books, so again, there is in the following books possibility that my hopes and dreams and heart will be absolutely dashed, but I love them as they are here, and I don't care that it's impractical, and I don't care that it's tragic. I like that it hurts me. Seven Blades in Black follows Sal, formerly known as Sal the Cacophony, a former deeply magical weapon of an empire whose magic was stripped from her for reasons, as she goes on a vengeance quest to end those who took her magic and herself, basically, from herself. It is a dangerous thing to be doing, considering a lot of the people that were the ones who took her magic from her still have their various magic powers, and she is now just like a really good fighter, but other than that, a normal mortal guy. But Sal is fueled by gay audacity and the desire for vengeance, and those two in combination I have not personally found are traits that can be vanquished by mere, I don't know, godly powers. Do not stand in the way of a lesbian scorned, is what I'm trying to say. But perhaps the greater tragedy in Sal's life, whether she recognizes it herself yet or not, at least by the end of the first book, is that her desire for this vengeance is kind of getting in the way of her being able to move on with her life, particularly her ability to move on with Liette, a sort of artificer, magical potioneer, engineer, just nerd, a giant big nerd who saves Sal's life over and over again as Sal gets absolutely cut up and destroyed on her vengeance quest. I think what keeps me coming back to, ow, oh no, they've hurt me physically as they do emotionally too. I think what keeps me coming back to Sal and Liette in my head is the way that it could be so good and easy for them, but if either of them actually made the choice to make it be easy and good for them, then they wouldn't be the women that the other had fallen in love with. So it's sort of by virtue of their natures, they have to end in some sort of tragedy. However, they're still ultimately called back to one another over and over again, regardless of how probably a bad idea it is the entire time. It's 2024. We don't have room anymore for just like being able to stick a queer character in a narrative and be like, woohoo, good, wonderful representation. No, we are owed books like this where queerness is also allowed to be messy and bad and painful, and not in a, you know, death of the queer person way or like outing narrative way, but in a we are people who make bad choices way, and those choices will catch up to us, and that is a threat. And it's so sad because when they are together, it's this beautiful, tender, deep and true love because they both know the ugliest parts of one another. They both look at each other and see the sad, pathetic things that they can be and say, I love you through this, not because I know you can be better, but because this is also worth loving. And that's I'm ruined. I'm simply ruined. Going back to another nostalgia pick, but one that just, I can't like not think about these two. They are Val and Ravus from Holly Black's Valiant, which is within her Tithe modern fairy tale series. These are from like the early 2000s, y'all. Valiant follows a girl named Valerie who, after her boyfriend cheats on her with her literal human mother, runs away to New York and ends up meeting up with some homeless kids in the street. Part of the way that Val and her new friends kind of survive existing as unhoused minors is by taking on jobs in the fairy world. Specifically, they are tasked with carrying a medicine that Ravus, a troll healer, makes to help the fairies living in the city deal with iron sickness and survive sort of the onslaught of being around so many humans. However, this medicine, when shot up by humans, can also make you like crazy high and basically temporarily give you the power of fairies and give you glamour and stuff. And similarly to Edwin and Isolde, when they first met, Val and Ravus are trying to kill each other. That is, he's trying to kill her, and she, being like a student athlete as she was before, tries to at least let her friends escape. And when Ravus notices that, you know, she's braver than standard, he agrees to teach her how to sword fight, and she will be another one of his potion runners. What draws me, I think, to Val and Ravus a lot is the fact that both of them are sort of rejected by their general societal milieu. Ravus is one of the solitary fae, so he's not part of any court technically, and he's a troll, so he's considered, you know, particularly ugly. And Val is something I'm just now realizing, autistic coded and bad at dealing with her friends in New Jersey. Her relationship with her mom is 10 kinds of fucked up, and they find a sort of understanding and a solace in one another, which is complicated in a million and one ways because Ravus doesn't feel good enough for her, and then he finds out that she's been, you know, taking his potion, like sort of skimming off the top, and then he's like, oh, are you actually capable of loving me, or do you love this thing that I can do? And there's a tremendous amount of angst, and I love them. She literally holds his carved out heart in her hands and returns it to him. When I say these books ruin me, when I say that these couples ruin me, I don't know what else there really is to say. There's something about all of the heterosexual couples that I've mentioned here, at least, where there's an element of the man worshiping the woman, and that very much features in here. But there's also an element of, regardless of how fucked up the various circumstances are, there's a mutual understanding and respect where both halves of the couple find some sort of common ground. And if a troll fairy and a 17-year-old human girl can figure that out, then there's absolutely no excuse for other authors' romantic subplots to fail. I've said what I said. But returning for a moment, if you will, to messy sapphic relationships, where I have more lenience for things being a trash fire and still like being haunted by the beauty of it all. And I already know what some of you are going to say about it, but the next couple I'm going to show you is Griddlehark from Tasman Weir's Gideon the Ninth series. Griddlehark is the ship name of Harrowhark Nonagesimus and Gideon. I don't really know how to explain these books in a way that doesn't either give everything away or make me go fully insane, because the entirety of the Locked Tomb series is just an absolute mindfuck. I don't really understand what Tamsin Weir's doing, but I'm having a good time with it. All you really need to know about Harrow and Gideon is that they absolutely hate each other at first, which is completely understandable on account of Harrow is the daughter, the reverend daughter, pardon me, of the ruling class of the ninth planet of this Necro Lord Prime. And Gideon is a foundling and essentially a servant of that house whose entire life basically has been made absolutely miserable by Harrow. Harrow is a necromancer bone mage, and Gideon like big sword only. Gideon wants really badly to be allowed to join the fighting forces of the Necro Lord Prime and basically be pulled out from under Harrow's thumb. And Harrow's like, all right, if you do just this one job with me, if you pretend to be my sworn cavalier so that I can ascend to lictorhood, basically sainthood, then I will give you your papers and you can leave at the end of it. So they are paired together, both of them kind of begrudging the other for having to be there in the first place. And they're sent off into this quest that turns abruptly into a fast-paced murder mystery, but more intense than that because people are actively dying throughout. And they just can't keep hating each other. They become more to one another than lovers. They become more to one another than family. And I see it as romantic in a deeply big way, even though there are a great many problems with calling them a couple, one of which is a enormous spoiler. The other probably being the emotional incompatibility. I think I read on Tumblr or something that somebody said the problem with Griddlehark is that Gideon wants to be a well-loved chew toy, whereas Harrow wants to put Gideon on display as though she is a like collectible that she keeps, you know, delicately wrapped within its original casing and dusted frequently on a up high shelf where nothing bad can ever happen to it. And as I continue with the series, do I think that anything is really going to come of their relationship? My delusional ass says yes. So I'm keeping them on this list because I think about the phrase one flesh, one end, but on an hourly basis, on a daily basis minimum. I love them. I love them, Your Honor. And the last couple I'm going to mention in this video, the last one that truly lives and sits in my feelings as just one of the things that ruins my life and makes me more feral than anything else, at least in terms of, you know, fictional romantic couples, is Yena and Nahadoth from N.K. Jemison's The 100,000 Kingdoms, the first book in the Inheritance trilogy. And I'm going to put this down because it is a very heavy book. There is something that is just so tasty to me about flawed gods. I love when gods are presented as more human than people would generally expect, in that they have, well, flaws, as I said, but also, you know, very understandably human emotions and human interrelationships and family trees and power structures and what have you. But I like it more, I think, when the gods are very clearly gods and thus separate from being human in the most mundane sense, where their moral codes are different and their power structures and hierarchies kind of are different, but they are still flawed in very human ways. And Nahadoth, I think, explains that to a T. Not only is he a literal death god, but he is also a little under the thumb of this ruling family. And Yena is one of the potential heirs to become the head of this ruling family and is sort of competing for the right and the privilege. But the gods all around this castle, who are sort of enslaved and kept under the thumb of the current regime and would be expected to remain under Yena's thumb should she win as well, have taken a specific and pointed interest in her. So I really enjoy the 100,000 Kingdoms for Yena's exploration, but the relationship between her and Nahadoth and how it expands and grows and what you find out at the end of the book as to being the reason why all of these gods were so invested in her in specific from the start is just, it's incredible. I love it. It is a love to rival the rest of the loves that I have been talking about here today. There's a magic to making the divine base by forcing it to love. I feel like love is often held up as this sort of divine emotion, as this thing that helps us rise above our baser natures, and I don't think that that's the case at all. I think love is primal and animal, and the way that this god at least loves points towards that theory in a very big way for me. And it, I mean, say it with me, folks, it ruins my life, it makes me feral, and I think about it on a daily basis at least. And now that I have brought all of these relationships and all of these characters into the forefront of my mind, and the rest of my evening is pretty much a wash, I'm gonna go ahead and call this video here. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave me a thumbs up, and if you like me, maybe consider subscribing to my channel. I post new videos every Thursday, and I'd love to have you join my little bookish family. Comment down below if you've read any of these books, or if leaving a comment is too hard, leave me your favorite colored heart emoji. But that is all for me. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you with the next video very, very soon. Goodbye.